Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip behind the battered wooden gates of a Han Dynasty kitchen, where the air is thick with morning charcoal smoke and the shouts of vendors echo against ancient roof tiles. Picture a world of steaming bamboo, baskets, stacks of green onions tied with rough string, and goose feathers stuck to your sandals after passing a busy duck stall. The hour is painfully early, your eyes still gummy with sleep, and your stomach growls from the leftover rice wine you sipped last night. You probably wouldn't survive a single sunrise in this place, where a chef's day begins before the roosters. Even think about crowing, and ends long after the lanterns burn low. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to post your location and what time you're listening. It's always amazing to see how far this sleepy little community reaches across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the pre-dawn gloom toward the morning market, guided by the distant clink of bronze coins and the unmistakable scent of wet bamboo baskets. Already, half-awake farmers lay out pale, thin radishes, leafy stems drooping with dew. Their calls slice through the hush like knife blades, fighting for attention from every chef, every busy housewife, every hungry servant sent on an errand. Your own shopping list feels endless. You need duck eggs, the right cut of pork, spring onions, mustard greens, dried shiitake, a splash of fermented soy paste, and of course, enough rice to keep a line of dumplings from falling apart halfway through steaming. All of that before the sun even brushes the sky with yellow dot as you wade deeper into the market. It feels like a living theater, each stall a stage with its own miniature drama. Two bean curd sellers argue over whose tofu is firmer. A ginger hawker waves a fistful of roots in the face of a woman demanding a cheaper price. You duck between them, stepping carefully over puddles as rich in kitchen gossip as they are in. Vegetable trimmings dot, and the gossip is worth listening to. One vendor says a palace cook was banished last month for oversalting a soup meant for the emperor. Another claims a visiting dignitary from far to the west demanded a feast with honey and sesame, sending the local spice vendors scrambling. Historians still argue whether those traveling guests really influenced Han Dynasty kitchens so directly, or whether the stories were spiced up, so to speak, by bored market gossips. The moment you pause at a rice seller's stall, a shriveled man with a thin gray beard seizes the chance to pitch you today's special, short grain rice, polished to a pearly glow, ideal for dumpling wrappers. You run your fingers through it, feeling the subtle grit against your skin. It is good rice, a little more expensive, but worth it. You remind yourself that the emperor's stewards might come calling at any moment, and nothing ruins a dumpling faster than bad rice dough. As you bargain, the vendor launches into a side rant about grain taxes going up again, that the district magistrate is skimming too much off the harvest. It's hard to know if he's telling the truth or just giving you an excuse for his high price. Either way, you nod politely and weigh out enough for the day. The night air shifts as dawn creeps in, streaking the sky rose and gold. You see a child carrying a clay water jug nearly as big as himself, weaving through the maze of baskets and jars. The boy's mother calls after him, her voice lost among the many. Even a scene like that reminds you how tight these neighborhoods are. Families tangled together like knots in a fisherman's net, working from sunrise to moonrise. You breathe deeply, inhaling wood smoke, garlic skins, and the faint metallic whiff of fresh dug lotus roots. You can practically taste the sweet savory dumplings in your mind, though your feet complain about another 12 hours of standing. Maybe you'll steal a moment to sip tea later. If luck smiles, then you catch a glimpse of another chef, a rival, standing at a spice stall with his arms folded, giving you a narrow-eyed look. It's a quiet, almost friendly challenge. Who will make the best dumplings this week? You grin, nod, and move on. There's no time to posture with so much work ahead. Past the fishmonger, past the woven chicken crates, you find your final items and stuff them into a hemp sack slung over your shoulder. The day is warming, the market beginning to thin as carts rattle away toward narrow alleys, each one heading back to a courtyard kitchen much like yours. Your own kitchen waits, its hearth still cold, its bronze wok stacked in a corner. Your apprentices probably still snoring under the bamboo roof beams. You'll need to kick them awake soon, which is bound to earn you a few grumbles. But a Han Dynasty chef can never sleep late. One last glance behind you, the market, a blur of color and smells, fades into the rising steam of the morning. Your arms ache from carrying so many supplies, but your mind is already ticking through the day's recipes. Dumplings, yes, but maybe something more daring if the palace stewards show up. A duck egg custard, perhaps, or steamed eel with ginger and wine out. It's a hard life, being the chef everyone depends on, but you wouldn't trade it even if historians still argue whether you should be called a cook or an artist. You shift your basket higher on your shoulder and steer your tired feet toward the duck egg seller, whose stall is marked by little clay lamps burning away the morning mist. These duck eggs are precious, the foundation of so many Han Dynasty delicacies, from silky steamed custards to bright, salty yolks tucked inside wheat dumplings. You reach out, testing each one with a gentle roll of your thumb, listening for that subtle thump, a chef's secret sign of freshness. The stall owner, a wiry woman with hair pinned up by a copper stick, watches you with sharp eyes, sizing up how serious you are. After all, a careless buyer might break the delicate shelves, and no cook worth their salt wants to waste coin on broken eggs. As she packs them carefully into a woven reed basket, she begins to chatter, her voice a blend of pride and village rumor. Word is, she tells you, the palace kitchens ran out of duck eggs last week because a flock of river cormorants scared the ducks into hiding. Historians still argue whether river birds truly affected egg production on a scale that worried the palace, or if it was another clever excuse when the taxes ran short. Either way, the woman assures you she's never let a bird frighten her ducks. You smile politely, absorbing the story while glancing over the stacks of eggs. They shine like polished ivory under the flickering lamp, each one promising richness that no chicken egg can match. The yolks alone, bright as sunrise, make you dream of dozens of custard buns steaming in a bamboo basket later tonight. Nearby, another vendor tries to undercut the duck egg seller by hawking quail eggs at a cheaper price, calling out that they're easier to cook, easier to store, easier on the stomach. You nearly laugh because you know better. Quail eggs might look pretty, but they can't hold up in a serious dumpling filling. A Han chef's reputation would sink faster than a rotted rice raft if they swapped duck eggs for quail dot as you pay. The vendor slides in closer, lowering her voice. She hints that the magistrate's nephew has been demanding more eggs lately, a sign that the palace may send a surprise food inspector soon. You raise an eyebrow, heart skipping. A palace food inspector means your dumplings might have to pass not just the taste of hungry customers, but the far stricter standards of a noble table. You take a breath, steady your nerves. You've survived palace orders before. Just. Even so, the duck eggs feel suddenly heavier in your hands. You remind yourself they're perfect, and perfection is your best defense. Moving on, you catch the scent of boiled bamboo leaves from another stall, where a grandmother is wrapping sticky rice balls for children's breakfast. The memory of sticky rice dumplings folded with fragrant duck egg yolk drifts across your mind, and you sigh, reminded of your mother's own festival treats. A giggle nearby catches your ear. Two young girls chase a rooster through the straw, their bare feet slapping against the damp ground, eyes bright as coins. For a moment, their innocence makes you pause, soaking in the scene. It's hard to remember sometimes that under all the competition, all the gossip, and all the palace intrigue, life here is still built on small joys and simple laughter. Your fingers tighten around the basket handle as you step back toward the main road. Ducks, you think. Someday you'd love to raise them yourself, skipping the market altogether, a dream you suspect every chef shares but rarely achieves. These ducks, so carefully herded along the riverbanks, provide an egg whose flavor can be traced in imperial recipes, where even historians have found references describing their golden yolks as gifts from the river. As you near your kitchen compound, you mentally sort the eggs. Which ones for dumplings, which for thickening sauces, which to keep back as a treat for apprentices if they manage not to burn the rice. Their shells tap softly against each other in the basket. A reassuring song of breakfast dash to dash be dot. A neighbor waves as you pass. A noodle cook with flour up to his elbows, bragging about a new pork broth he's been testing. You promise to taste it later, maybe swap a duck egg or two if he'll trade you a splash of sesame oil. In Han kitchens, trades and favors swirl around like a river current. You never know when a simple egg might buy you a priceless spice later in the week, pausing outside your courtyard gate. You catch your breath, adjusting your tunic and patting a stray grain of rice off your sleeve. You'll need steady hands for the delicate yolks after all. One slip, and the whole batch might leak into the steamer and dissolve. Disaster. Inside. The kitchen is waking up, apprentices clattering bronze bolts, fumbling with kindling, still, half dreaming as they try to remember which tasks come first. You step through the gate, lifting the duck eggs high like a general showing off trophies, ready to rally your troops for another day of feeding an empire that demands nothing less than perfection. Because in this job, there are no second chances. And if the duck eggs break, you'd better pray there's a chicken willing to lay a miracle before sunrise. You barely have time to breathe before someone pulls at your sleeve. It's the rice merchant, standing just inside the courtyard with a scowl deep enough to hide a rat in. His tunic is stained with old soy, the cuffs ragged from months of hauling sacks, but his back is as straight as any scholar's. He is your grain supplier, whether you like it or not, and today he looks ready to unleash a storm. He starts immediately, his voice rising like a hawk's cry. The taxes, he complains, have gone up again. The magistrate's collectors, apparently, are squeezing every copper coin from farmers before the harvest even finishes. You glance at your apprentices, half listening while sweeping the courtyard, trying to act as though this is all normal. Which, sadly, it is. Historians still argue whether these taxes truly choked off innovation in Han kitchens, or if skilled chefs adapted no matter what. Judging by the rice merchant's face, you suspect the taxes do more harm than any amount of spice shortages. You interrupt him gently, reminding him you'll need a fresh bag of short grain rice for dumplings, no stones mixed in, no stale rice from last season. He snorts and gives you a look that says, "Do I look like an amateur?" Then, as if to prove the point, he opens the cloth wrapping on a gleaming white sack of grain so perfect they look carved from jade. You reach down, sifting the rice through your fingers. It slides smoothly, cool and heavy, with a faint grassy scent still clinging to it. It will hold together beautifully in your dumpling wrappers, you know. You almost sigh in relief. Yet the merchant goes on, ranting as he weighs the measure. Bandits on the southern road, corrupt guards at the toll gate, a plague of locusts one county over. If you believed every word, you'd think the entire empire was one bowl of rice away from collapse. A small joke bubbles in your mind, and you let it slip. Maybe if I feed the tax collectors enough dumplings, they'll forget the taxes. The merchant barks a laugh, teeth yellow but grin genuine, and you both share a rare moment of humor in a world too used to worry. Once the measure is sealed and tied with reed twine, he insists on watching you count out each coin. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, Do not miss even a chipped bronze piece. You hand over the money and try not to wince at how light your purse feels after. Running a Han Dynasty kitchen is an expensive business. No matter how many dumplings you sell, he leaves with a final grumble about tax receipts, which you suspect he will be complaining about for another year. You watch his bent figure disappear down the alley, sack bouncing against one bony hip, and feel a strange sort of gratitude. Without him, your dumplings would be nothing more than a mess of fillings without a skin to hold them. Turning, you take a moment to settle the new rice inside your kitchen's clay bin. The apprentices eye it eagerly, maybe hoping to steal a handful for a late snack. You shake your head and point them toward their next chores. They burn half the grains to ash. If you let them near the stove alone, you gather a scoop of rice in your palm, letting the weight of it center your mind. Rice, after all, is more than a side dish. It is the soul of dumplings, the backbone of every steamed bun and sticky cake that will leave your kitchen today. Some say the empire itself was built on bowls of rice, and looking at these pearly grains, you can believe it. A fringe rumor drifts through your memory, something you once overheard near a scholar's table, that rice has its own spirit, a gentle presence that will reward careful hands but curse those who treat it poorly. Historians still argue if that belief came from true ritual or was invented by worried mothers to keep children from wasting dinner. You think of the story anyway, bowing your head for a breath, promising the rice you will honor its goodness. Because you've seen what happens when rice is treated with laziness, clumps, cracks, and the heartbreak of dumplings splitting apart in the steamer. You brush off a stray grain clinging to your sleeve and glance around the courtyard. Someone is singing near the back stove, a clumsy, off-key folk song about love lost and tofu spoiled. The note is so bad it makes you grin, but it somehow fits the mood. Even on a stressful morning, there's space for laughter. Lifting your basket of duck eggs once again, you give the rice bin a respectful pat, like a friend you trust with a secret, and prepare to face the next challenge. The palace stewards might still send word, the weather might still turn, but at least your rice is good. And for a chef in the Han Dynasty, that alone is worth a toast of rice wine tonight, if there's any left after the apprentices get to it first. You take a deep breath, steadying yourself before stepping back into the main lane of the market, drawn by a swirl of perfume so thick you nearly sneeze. There, waiting in a shady booth beneath a bright yellow awning, is the spice trader. A man whose beard is so long it could hide a kitchen knife, if not an entire cleaver. He sees you coming and grins, displaying a row of teeth suspiciously bright for someone selling powdered roots. His table is covered with tiny clay bowls, each mounded with spices you'd swear came from the corners of the earth. There's powdered cinnamon as red as a sunset, Sichuan peppercorns with a numbing citrus bite, fennel seeds as green as fresh grass, and something called cumin, which he claims arrived on the cart of a Silk Road traveler. You lean over to smell them, your nose twitching at so many competing aromas. The trader chuckles, no doubt enjoying your confusion. It's his game, a theater of spice, with you as the captive audience. You point to the star anise, which glimmers like a tiny brown starfish. It costs double this month, he warns. Supply. Wagons from the southwest were delayed by floods. Historians still argue whether traders exaggerated these shortages to raise their profits or whether monsoon rains truly interrupted spice caravans. Either way, your wallet suffers. You sigh and pay. A duck egg custard with no star anise would taste sad and flat, like a poem with the last line missing. Even a palace steward could tell. Then you notice another bowl filled with what looks like crushed rose petals. The trader notices your interest and winks. Foreign, he claims, from a land where they perfume milk and sugar. You chuckle. It seems extravagant, even silly, but you buy a pinch anyway. Sometimes surprise is worth the risk. The trader, sensing your moment of weakness, leans forward with a conspiratorial grin. He tells you that a Persian merchant came through last. Weak, demanding sesame, garlic, and yellow wine for a mysterious sauce no one here had tasted before. You raise an eyebrow. Even in the Han Dynasty, culinary fads travel fast. One of your apprentices tugs your sleeve, eyes wide as rice bowls. He's never smelled so many spices in one place. You ruffle his hair and tell him to remember these scents because a true chef uses the nose as much as the tongue. Another apprentice tries to pocket a Sichuan peppercorn, thinking you won't see, but you catch him in time, tapping his hand with a wooden spoon you carry like a general's baton. The trader only laughs, enjoying the free show. There's a fringe rumor he shares, lowering his voice dramatically, that certain spices could ward off demons if burned at the right hour. Historians still argue whether this was serious protection, or simply a reason to use up stale stock. Either way, the trader claims he slept soundly ever since. You finish choosing. The star anise, a small pouch of ground cinnamon, some fermented soy bricks, and a pinch of those rosy petals. Your purse feels dangerously empty now, but your mind is rich with recipe ideas, each one shimmering with spice dreams. As you shoulder your basket once more, the trader calls after you, promising to hold back a handful of clove buds if the next ship arrives on time. You thank him, though you know in your gut you might never see those cloves. Ships are lost, roads washed away, taxes raised. So many small disasters can steal your spices before they ever hit your walk. Walking back toward the kitchen, you brush spice dust from your sleeves and catch a whiff of that rose petal. It's delicate, almost sweet, and makes you imagine dumplings the color of blushing peaches, stuffed with sesame and honey, crowned with a swirl of crushed petals. Maybe the palace would approve. Or maybe they'd look at you like you'd fed them peacock feathers. Hard to say. Past the sugar vendor, past the fishmonger scrubbing scales with a wire brush, you march on, basket heavier than ever. You mentally sort through your plans. Duck egg custard, sesame rose dumplings, the usual pork and ginger variety for the loyal customers, and a pot of rice congee to soothe tired bellies after the midday rush. You pause near a drainage channel, peering at a pair of ducks bobbing along on the water. For a second you think about the irony. Those same birds whose eggs you prize could end up on the stove if the emperor changed his mind. It's a chef's life, you remind yourself, to balance chance, flavor, and survival all in one bamboo steamer. One of the apprentices asks why you don't just open a simpler stall with fewer fancy spices. You give him a half smile and answer that anyone can boil rice, but very few can tell the story of an empire through flavor. The air feels a little brighter after that, the sun finally reaching the narrow lanes and turning each spice bowl in your mind into small lanterns of possibility. The day is warming quickly now, sunlight glinting off clay roofs as you make your way back toward the butcher's stall. You can hear him before you see him. A chorus of chickens protesting their fate, ducks quacking from woven cages, and the deep, hoarse bellow of a pig waiting to be portioned. The butcher stands among it all like a commander on a battlefield, blade resting across one broad shoulder, eyes as sharp as his cleaver. He greets you with a grunt and a half smile. Over the years, you've built a wary friendship. He knows you demand meat of consistent quality, no random bones to ruin the texture of a dumpling. He respects that, even if he thinks you fuss too much. He leans closer, wiping sweat from his brow with a sleeve streaked in pork fat, and launches into a complaint about thieves. Apparently, bandits have been prowling the roads again, bold enough to steal a whole cart of pigs on its way into town. Historians still argue whether these bandit raids were truly constant threats or merely seasonal, but today the butcher is certain they're real. He's missing a quarter of his usual supply. You sympathize, though you're mostly focused on the pork laid out in front of you. Marbled and fresh, the color of new clay, it glistens faintly where the morning breeze catches it. You point to a section near the belly, perfect for dumplings. Tender but rich enough to stand up to steaming Dot as he slices it free. He jokes that you should try stuffing dumplings with duck meat instead, since pigs might vanish altogether at this rate. You grin and tell him duck is for custard and eggs today. Let's not tempt the emperor with a brand new trend just yet. The apprentices hover behind you, fascinated by the butcher's skill as he trims the pork into neat slabs. One boy asks if the knife is magic, so quick and sure. The butcher snorts, tapping the blade against the counter like a chime. Magic is knowing where the bone is, he says, and not pretending otherwise. You make a mental note to use that line later when teaching how to slice fish for soup. Theirs. A fringe tale you once heard about butchers, that they used to whisper apologies to each pig before striking the fatal blow. Some still do. Historians argue if that was true ritual or invented to comfort people who had to live side by side with their animals. You catch a glimpse of the butcher's lips moving softly and wonder if he might still believe it. He weighs the pork on an iron scale balanced with polished stones, every gram measured out with grave care. When you nod approval, he wraps it in bamboo leaves tied with a thin reed. A gentle gesture among all the violence of knives and hooks. Beyond the butcher's block, you see a couple of geese fighting each other in their pen, feathers flying like white confetti. One nearly escapes, only to be dragged back by a quick-footed helper. The butcher sighs, wiping his hands again. They'll roast one of those for some festival, he mutters, but you can have a leg cheap if you want. You shake your head. Geese are a luxury you can't afford today, not with the palace sniffing around your dumplings. With a respectful bow, you thank him and collect the precious pork. He claps you on the shoulder, leaving a faint print of lard that you'll have to wash out later. Occupational hazard, you think with a smile. Stepping away, you pass a little girl clutching a copper coin, eyes wide as she points to a chicken twice her size. Her father gently steers her away, promising a simpler meal of tofu instead. Even in the Han Dynasty, protein was a precious treat. You carry your prize back through the maze of the market, weaving around fishmongers rinsing scales from baskets, hawkers shouting about ginger and vinegar, and a dried mushroom seller trying to charm a group of passing scholars with talk of medicinal soups. At last, you see your own gate again. The apprentices are sweeping the courtyard, their brooms, stirring up pale clouds of rice husk. They see the pork in your hands and cheer like soldiers welcoming a hero with captured treasure. You can't help but laugh, telling them to save the applause for after they peel the garlic dot in the half-shade of the kitchen. You set the pork down and open its bamboo leaf wrapping, letting the scent rise like an offering to the gods of flavor. It smells rich, faintly grassy, and perfect. Tomorrow there might be no pigs. Tomorrow bandits might snatch the next shipment. But today, you have pork worthy of a dumpling fit for an emperor, and that, you decide, is enough. You wipe a bead of sweat from your forehead and turn your gaze toward a quieter row of the market, where the tofu sellers have their stalls. A low wall of clay jars filled with bean curd stands like a pale fortress against the sun. You wander closer, letting the smell of fresh soy, a little sour and a little nutty, wrap around you. Tofu, you remind yourself, is not to be underestimated. It may look bland and simple, but it holds secrets. The soft, silken curds that melt in soup, the firm, pressed cakes that hold up in a stir-fry, the bits fried crisp and golden that even picky children will eat without complaint. One elderly woman tends the stall, her hands speckled with flecks of bean paste. She greets you like an old friend, teasing you for burning dumplings again last week. You laugh and bow, conceding the rumor, though you know your apprentices were to blame for that disaster. While she wraps a block of firm tofu in a lotus leaf, she begins to talk about the monks who have come through town lately, praising the virtues of vegetarian food. Historians still argue whether these vegetarian influences truly swayed common kitchens during the Han, or if they were mostly a fad limited to temples. Either way, tofu was always on someone's table. Your mind drifts as she talks, remembering how even the emperor's physicians had a fondness for tofu, claiming it was gentle on the stomach after heavy banquets. And with duck egg custards and pork dumplings on today's menu, your own stomach might need a gentle moment later. Next to you, an apprentice eyes the wobbly bowl of silken tofu on display and nearly tips it over with a clumsy elbow. You grab him by the shoulder just in time, steadying the bowl before its pale cargo can become one with the dirt. He stammers an apology, cheeks bright red. You shake your head with a sigh. Training apprentices is harder than training fish to swim straight, you sometimes think. While you negotiate the price for the bean curd, a pair of children pass by, their faces sticky with hawthorn candy, giggling about the sweet taste. You glance over, wondering if you might try a dessert today with hawthorn syrup drizzled over sweetened tofu. It's a strange idea, but sometimes strange is the spark of brilliance. The tofu vendor leans in, sharing a fringe bit of gossip. One monk claims to have lived 10 years eating only tofu and pickled radish. You raise your eyebrows, wondering if that was discipline or simply an empty wallet. Historians, as always, still argue whether such stories were real or just temple legends to impress visitors. As you pay and accept the heavy block, she slips in a quiet blessing, wishing your dumplings hold together better this time. You thank her, promising to stop by after the lunch rush to let her taste one. You carry the tofu back through a lane where roof tiles drip from a recent rain. The air thick with the scent of hot iron and wet earth. Someone is hammering at a broken cartwheel nearby, the clanging echoing off courtyard walls. The sound mixes with the murmur of traders packing up their leftover goods, ready to nap through the hot midday before returning in the afternoon. At your gate, you pause for a moment, shifting your basket and balancing the precious block of tofu on top of the duck eggs and pork. It all feels heavy, but the weight is reassuring. The kitchen waits, hungry for your direction. Inside, your apprentices are rolling dough too thin, their nervous chatter filling the courtyard. You call out instructions, showing them how to pinch the dumpling skins thick enough to hold, but soft enough to fold easily. The smell of burning firewood snakes through the yard as one boy tries to spark the stove. You shake your head again. You place the tofu on the chopping block, slicing off a corner to taste its gentle, creamy flavor. Even the best pork or duck egg custard needs a lighter dish to balance its richness. Your guests, whether palace inspectors or hungry scholars, will expect variety. Another quick idea strikes you: a tofu dish with ginger, scallion, and a splash of vinegar. Something cooling for the summer heat. You note it in your head as one more recipe for later. And there, with the tofu safely stacked alongside duck eggs and pork, you look around the chaotic, hopeful, half-awake kitchen and let yourself feel a moment of quiet pride. Because a Han Dynasty chef, you remind yourself, is more than just a cook. You're a steward of stories, of spices, of vegetables and flavors, carrying them forward from market stalls to palace tables, one steaming dumpling at a time. You turn from the courtyard just as one of your apprentices trips over a basket of green onions, sending stalks scattering like startled birds. You sigh, bending to scoop them up, the familiar scent of their sharp, fresh bite filling your nose. Above the confusion, you hear the faint clang of bronze pots coming from the storeroom. Time to check the tools. You head inside, stepping past baskets of dried shiitake, jugs of vinegar, and a half-finished pile of ginger roots, until you reach the storeroom shelves where your prized bronze pots are lined up like soldiers awaiting. Inspection. Bronze, the shimmering, weighty heart of your kitchen. These pots have simmered everything from delicate duck egg custards to sour plum broths. You lift the lid on one, inspecting its polished interior, tracing your finger along. A faint line where an apprentice scorched a sauce last month. Even now, that faint metallic tang reminds you of how carefully bronze must be treated. Historians still argue whether Han Dynasty bronze craftsmanship truly surpassed that of the earlier Zhou period, but you can swear on a bowl of rice that these bronze pots were worth every coin you paid. Their even heat, their stubborn durability, their ability to hold a soft simmer without burning. They're as valuable to you as any spice or duck egg. Your youngest apprentice hovers in the doorway, eyes wide, marveling at the rows of coppery sheen. You explain patiently that these pots are an heirloom from older masters, each one stamped with delicate characters marking their lineage. Some have handles shaped like fish, others with lotus flowers engraved in their bellies. They are not just tools, they are history in a pot, living stories you stir every morning. The apprentice reaches to touch one, but you gently slap his hand away, joking that these pots are more precious than his clumsy fingers. He laughs, cheeks pink, and you promise he can help polish them later if he remembers to keep his hands clean. Beyond their beauty, bronze pots carry an unexpected side note of superstition. A fringe belief says that a pot that sings, ringing faintly while heating, is a lucky omen for a profitable day. Historians still argue whether that was born of a chef's wishful thinking or some mystical reading of sound and metal. But even you can't help but listen for that thin, bell-like note whenever you fire up the hearth dot as you shift the pots one by one. Checking for dents, your mind wanders to the stews they'll hold later. Pork belly with garlic shoots, fresh water. Carp and ginger broth, maybe even a delicate lotus root soup for the visiting scholars. You can practically hear the sizzle already. Outside the storeroom, a breeze rattles the courtyard bamboo, stirring a light rain of petals from the peach tree that shades one wall. The apprentices, still wrestling with their dumpling dough, shout and squabble over whose folds are tightest, but you trust they'll get it right with a little more practice and a little more shouting from you. You lift one of the bronze lids and hold it to the light, admiring how it catches the dawn like a polished mirror. A moment of calm, you think, before the day roars fully to life. Returning to the stove, you place the best bronze pot front and center, ready for its next challenge. This is no cheap clay pot that will crack with the first boil. This is bronze, hammered and poured and refined by craftsmen whose names you will never know, but whose skill lives on in every savory broth. You check the fire pit stones, clearing out the ash and stacking fresh wood, then place the pot gently on the trivet like a treasured jewel being set in its case. The apprentices gather around, eyes shining, waiting for their next orders. One boy dares to ask if bronze is better than iron. You grin and explain that iron is for soldiers, bronze is for artists. A cook might fight with iron, but he dreams with bronze. The boy looks puzzled, but you can see the seeds of curiosity sprouting behind his eyes as you turn toward the pantry to collect your spices. A bronze ladle clangs on the floor. You roll your eyes, half annoyed, half amused. It seems your apprentices can knock over anything within reach. Still, you feel grateful for their energy. The Han Dynasty may rise and fall outside these walls, but in this kitchen, its spirit lives on in the hands of every cook who dreams of feeding the world. And as the pot warms on the newly lit hearth, you listen for that hopeful singing note, imagining how many more dumplings, how many more soups, how many more stories it will hold before the sun goes down. You nudge a half-asleep apprentice out of the way, ready to light the kitchen hearth at last. In the Han Dynasty, the heart of any kitchen was its fire, not just for cooking, but for keeping the rhythms of the entire household alive. You crouch, down, striking a spark against a bit of flint until a curl of smoke breathes upward, catching on twisted reeds you'd set aside the night before. The fire takes slowly, coughing up a few sparks as if complaining about being woken this early. You blow gently, coaxing it to life. Flames lick the bronze pot's belly with a soft, eager sigh, and for a moment, you allow yourself a sense of triumph. A good fire means a good day, simple as that. Around you, the apprentices start to move faster, jolted awake by the sudden warmth. One of them, eyes still crusty with sleep, starts stacking wood far too high. You wave him back before he turns the whole kitchen into a furnace. With a soft chuckle, you remind him that a steady, gentle fire is what makes Dumplings dream, not a wildfire roaring through the hearth like a warhorse. Historians still argue whether Han Dynasty cooks truly invented the early principles of wok-based stir-frying or whether that was a later innovation. But here, you have a small wok already waiting. Its iron rim glints as you slide it next to the bronze pot, ready for quick sears and fast broths. You are always prepared to shift between methods, a flexibility you've had to teach every one of your apprentices over and over again. Once the flame is steady, the smell of burning kindling turns to the welcoming aroma of warm bronze and faint, charred ginger. You sigh in contentment. If any gods are watching, let them know your kitchen is open for business. The apprentices move in a clumsy dance, fetching ladles, hauling water, wiping down the clay tiles, bumping elbows. Someone manages to knock over a bowl of scallions again, sending green slices rolling under the stove. You close your eyes, trying not to laugh. Even a palace kitchen must start somewhere, and this is yours. An old superstition comes to mind. The first flame of the day carries the kitchen's fortune. If it burns evenly, the food will please the diners. If it sputters or dies, you risk trouble. You remember an aunt telling you that as a child, leaning close to warm her hands, and it still clings to your memory even now. Historians, of course, debate whether that was true belief or just another excuse when a dish flopped. While you tend the flame, you think about what will come next. Dumplings plump with pork and duck egg yolk, a delicate tofu dish with ginger, and scallions, and maybe a fresh congee to soothe those who work the morning shift. You mentally check your list, letting the slow rhythm of the fire calm your thoughts. One of your apprentices tries to sneak a rice ball from the pantry, thinking, "You won't see." You catch him, one eyebrow raised, and he freezes in place, cheeks stuffed. You can't help but laugh and send him to sweep the courtyard, but slip him half a dumpling from last night, a silent bribe to keep him cheerful. The bronze pot begins to whisper, the water inside quivering with that lovely, thin note you always hope for. The singing pot, you call it, a good omen that today, at least, will not collapse under its own chaos. You ladle in a scoop of rice to soak while you prep other dishes, letting the grains swirl and puff like little white pillows. The smell is soft and comforting, promising a simple, honest meal. Beyond the courtyard, you hear merchants shouting about fresh apricots, a donkey braying under a heavy load, the clang of a metalworker hammering out copper pans. The world is awake now, noisy, messy, and determined. You stand, stretching your back, wiping soot from your palms, and feel a small pride settle in your chest. Because this hearth, this sputtering, flickering line of flame, is yours. It is your kingdom, however small, and you rule it with a bronze pot, a bamboo spatula, and a heart set on feeding everyone who comes through the door. As the apprentices swarm to their tasks, you call out orders, your voice cutting through the clatter. Duck eggs, ready to steam. Pork, ready to mince. Tofu, set to drain. Dough, roll it thicker, you say, or it will split before it even meets the steamer's hiss. The first bit of dawn light finally angles through the roof beams, striking the bronze pot and making it gleam like a treasure. You take that as a sign, a gentle blessing for the day ahead, and let yourself breathe it in. There will be mistakes. There will be burned dumplings, spilled sauce, apprentices tripping over each other like startled ducklings. But there will also be flavor, laughter, and maybe a moment of brilliance. And that, you decide, is enough to keep the fire burning. You straighten from the hearth, watching steam curl from the bronze pot like a silk ribbon, and turn your attention to the workbench where your apprentices are attacking the dumpling dough. Their clumsy hands mash the dough too hard, tearing little holes that will ruin the delicate dumpling skins. You step forward with a teacher's sigh, ready to save them and the dumplings from collapse. You gather the sticky mess and begin working the dough yourself, showing them how your fingers knead gently, folding the mass inward and pressing it down with the rhythm of a breathing bellows. You talk softly while you work, explaining that dough is like a quiet servant. If you treat it kindly, it will obey, but if you bully it, it rebels. The apprentices nod, eyes huge, trying to copy you. One pinches off a piece so small it would barely wrap a pea. Another tears his dumpling with the force of a warhorse pulling reins. You hold back a laugh, shaping another perfect wrapper to show them how a thin center and thicker edge make the fold seal beautifully. Historians still argue whether the art of dumpling folding truly began in hand kitchens or whether it developed later, but you'd bet your favorite bronze spoon it was perfected here. There's something timeless about this quiet moment. The careful shaping of dough, the way each dumpling holds a story inside, a secret wrapped in wheat. A fringe superstition whispers through your mind as you fold, that dumplings are good luck. Charms, their crescent shape a mirror of the ancient Chinese coin. Make them right, and you feed prosperity to every belly. Mess them up, and you invite misfortune. You grin at the thought, scaring the apprentices with a sudden flash of teeth. While they giggle, you move on to the fillings. The pork is waiting, marinated with wine, ginger, and a splash of soy, its color rich and its scent promising. You break up the yolks of a few duck eggs, mixing their golden richness into the meat, stirring slowly with a bamboo spoon until it glows like a sunrise dot as you stuff the dumplings. You explain the soup trick, a bit of gelatin simmered from pig skin the night before, melts inside the dumpling during steaming to create a perfect spoonful of hot, rich broth. The apprentices look astonished, as if you performed magic, and you let them believe it's a spell only you know. You line the dumplings on a bamboo tray, one by one, each little pouch of luck and labor waiting its turn. The apprentices start repeating the folding pattern to each other like a nursery rhyme: pinch, fold, turn, seal. And you smile, satisfied that someday they might pass that rhythm along to their own kitchens. From the courtyard comes the clatter of a visitor's sandals. A steward from the palace, dressed in pale robes, steps in with the air of someone who expects respect. He glances around, frowning at the apprentices, then meets your eyes and asks if the dumplings are ready. You bow, answer politely, and gesture to the steaming trays that are almost finished. The steward nods, checking your work as if you might sneak in a rotten fish by mistake. Historians still argue whether palace inspectors were fair or simply terrified of serving spoiled food to an emperor with a famously unpredictable temper. You suspect the truth is a bit of both. As you present a sample dumpling, the steward sniffs it, bites carefully, and nods, a gesture so small you almost miss it. Then he leaves, satisfied for now. You exhale, shoulders sagging with relief. The apprentices look at you in awe, as though you just survived a dragon's test. You let out a laugh, telling them it was nothing, but inside your heartbeat still rattles like a loose pot lid. Beyond the kitchen walls, you hear the market fading for the day, vendors rolling up their mats, children chasing each other between carts, the dusty quiet of noon settling in. You know there is still much to do, but in this moment, With a tray of perfect dumplings resting by your side, you allow yourself a breath of pride. No burned skins, no torn folds, no sloppy ceiling. Just plump little coins of good fortune, waiting for the steam to work its gentle magic. And tomorrow, of course, you'll do it all again, because in the Han Dynasty, even perfection has an expiration date. You set aside the trays of dumplings, letting the rising steam fill every crack of the kitchen with a perfume of pork, duck egg, and wheat. Now, you shift your focus to the marinade. Pork alone will not hold the flavor long enough for the palace. It must be treated like an honored guest, coaxed and pampered until it practically sings. You collect a clay jar of rice wine, pouring a gentle splash over the slices of belly pork. The scent is bright and slightly sweet, promising to cut through the meat's richness. You sprinkle in salt, then scatter star anise, ginger slivers, and a splash of soy sauce, stirring with your bamboo spoon until it glistens like lacquer. One of the apprentices asks why bother since the pork is fresh. You grin and explain that even the best meat needs encouragement, like a singer warming up before a show. Marinating is as much poetry as science. The flavors blend and learn to dance together before hitting the steamer's heat. Historians still argue whether the Han chefs truly practiced formal marinade recipes or if they simply trusted their instincts, adjusting on the fly. Watching the sauce seep into the pork, you suspect it's always been a dance between knowledge and a lucky nose. While the pork rests, you begin sorting out aromatics. Garlic cloves bruised with the flat of a knife. Spring onions sliced fine. A silk thread. A pinch of ground Sichuan pepper to tease the tongue. These will slip into the dumpling filling for a subtle kick, reminding diners that even a humble wrapper can hide bold surprises. A fringe rumor drifts through your thoughts. Something you heard from a traveling cook once, that star anise, if burned, could drive out evil spirits hiding in the kitchen. You chuckle, letting the apprentices catch your grin, and they look around as though they might spot a demon in the firewood pile beyond the courtyard wall. The street sounds shift. The fishmonger's voice fades, replaced by a pair of scholars, debating something you can't hear clearly. You imagine they're arguing about Confucian codes of hospitality, or maybe just whose wife makes better steamed buns. Either way, it's a familiar hum, the city's constant background music. You call for a basin of water, letting the apprentices scrub their hands before they dare touch your marinated pork. Clean hands are no small matter. One apprentice tries to skip the wash, but you catch him, pulling him back by the ear and dunking his hands straight in. The others giggle until you fix them with a look sharp enough to slice bamboo. Finally, the meat is ready, glistening with fragrant sauce. You begin to dice it, showing the apprentices how to cut evenly, no ragged bits, no lumps that will break the dumpling skin. Your blade works in a steady rhythm. Chop, chop, scrape. A sound that calms you like a lullaby. While you work, the apprentices debate whether the palace steward will come back later, and one guesses the emperor himself might taste today's dumplings. You nearly choke on a laugh. The emperor would never stoop to a dusty courtyard kitchen, but you let them dream. After all, dreams are what keep the pot simmering. A gust of breeze slips through the courtyard, rattling the bamboo fence and carrying a hint of rain. You pause to smell it. Wet earth, green leaves, the faint smoke of distant hearths. It's a reminder that everything here, from your dumplings to the emperor's banquets, depends on the mercy of the weather. You finish mixing the pork with its aromatics, letting the flavors rest while the apprentices gather up the first round of dumplings for steaming. You pause, eyeing their handiwork, ready to bark a correction, but to your surprise, they've done well. The folds are tight, the skin smooth, the shape perfect. You nod, a quiet reward, and see their shoulders straighten with pride. One Of them dares to joke that maybe the dumplings will bring him enough luck to marry a noodle seller's daughter. You snort, telling him dumplings can work miracles, but not that many. They laugh, tension easing from their faces. You set the first tray onto the steamer rack, watching as the bamboo basket closes over it like a protective dome. Steam will do. The final work, weaving every flavor together until the dumplings become greater than the sum of their humble parts. In that moment, you realize how much you trust this old bamboo steamer. It has survived countless fires, countless apprentices, countless mistakes. It is a quiet witness to your life as a Han Dynasty chef, and you pat its woven lid with a small, private thanks. Outside, the rain begins to patter on the tiled roof. Cool and soothing. You close your eyes, breathing in the damp, sweetened air, and think of the dumplings steaming away, their broth forming, their skin sealing, their flavors blooming. If this is the measure of your day, you think, then it is. Already a good one. The rain taps steadily on the clay roof as you move back toward the corner shelves where your jars of pickles wait, each one sealed with an oiled paper lid. You lift one, breaking the wax seal with a satisfying pop and the scent of sour plum. And ginger greets you like an old friend. Pickles, the quiet champions of a Han kitchen. You pull out a pair of bamboo tongs, fishing a slippery slice of pickled radish from the brine. Its bright yellow skin practically glows, promising a sharp, tangy counterpoint to the rich dumplings. A bite of pickles resets the tongue, gives the diner permission to take another dumpling, then another, until there are no dumplings left at all. That, you think, is the true genius of the pickle jar. One apprentice peeks over your shoulder, nose wrinkling. Why would anyone eat something so sour? He asks, wide-eyed. You grin and tell him to wait until he's tasted a greasy duck egg bun. Then he'll understand. Historians still argue whether Han kitchens developed pickling arts on their own or borrowed techniques from wandering merchants along the Silk Road. You suspect it was both, because any chef who's ever faced a rainy season with no fresh greens will learn to pickle in a hurry. Next to the radish jar is one filled with lotus root slices floating in vinegar, spiced with dried tangerine peel and a hint of pepper. You spear one, popping it into your mouth, and let the crunch wake up your senses. Even after months in brine, the lotus holds a fresh snap, proof that nature and patience can sometimes outdo any clever recipe. As you set these pickles on the preparation table, an apprentice starts to retch dramatically, claiming the smell will make him faint. You flick a slice of lotus root at his head and remind him that someday he'll thank you for teaching him flavor balance. There is also a smaller jar, hidden behind the larger crocks, full of something that makes even your nose wrinkle goose. Feet, fermented until their skin turns translucent. A fringe delicacy, you tease the apprentices. If they ever grow bold enough, you'll let them try it. They turn pale at the thought, backing away. You laugh, remembering a market rumor that goose feet can make you run faster if you eat enough of them, a superstition more hopeful than scientific. Historians still argue if that belief had any basis in folk medicine, but no one seems in a hurry to research it properly. You scoop a small bowl of radish slices, drizzle them with sesame oil, and sprinkle a touch of chopped chili on top. They look beautiful, a bright, cheerful contrast to the dumpling trays now steaming away. In the background, you hear the water in the bronze pot beginning to hum, promising the congee will soon bubble up. The apprentices circle around curious about your pickles despite their earlier protests. You offer each of them a slice, insisting they taste. One by one, they make faces, laugh, then admit the flavors somehow work. It's a tiny victory, but one you savor. Beyond the kitchen gate, you catch a faint whiff of sweet smoke, someone burning incense for good luck before the festival begins. Rainy season always brings its own celebrations, a strange mix of thankfulness and caution. Even the river seems to hold its breath as everyone waits to see whether the floods will stay away this year. You look again at your pickle jars and feel a sense of calm. This is the taste of preservation, the knowledge that no matter how harsh the season, a careful chef can save a bit of summer's brightness in a clay crock dot as the congee begins to bubble. You move closer, stirring its thick, gentle swirl. You sprinkle in a dash of the lotus root brine, a trick you learned from an old neighbor to deepen the flavor without adding too much salt. The apprentices watch, fascinated, and you remind them that sometimes the simplest ideas are the most powerful. One boy dares to ask if you'll teach him to ferment goose feet next. You arch an eyebrow and tell him to master the art of folding dumplings first, one horror at a time. The kitchen erupts in laughter, shaking off the morning's tension. Steam rolls up from the dumpling baskets, sweet and savory and sharp all at once. You check the folds, pleased to see not a single skin has split, and glance back at the pickles you've set out. It feels right. This harmony of preserved and fresh, soft and crunchy, delicate and bold. And just for a moment, in the hush of the rain and the heat of the hearth, you let yourself believe that a Han chef with a few jars of pickles and a bamboo steamer can hold back the chaos of the world one meal at a time. You take a final glance at the pickle jars, lid sealed once more, and turn your attention back to the steamer towers stacked high in the courtyard. Each basket is a little miracle of woven bamboo, sturdy enough to hold a dozen dumplings yet, delicate enough to let fragrant steam slip through the seams. The steamers themselves are marvels, stitched together by generations of basket makers whose skill deserves as much praise as any chef. You slide open the top basket, letting a wave of rich, meaty aroma escape. Pork and duck egg dumplings gleam like polished stones, their skins taut and translucent, whispering stories of garlic, ginger, and sesame. With every swirl of steam. An apprentice at your elbow leans too close, nearly breathing on the dumplings, and you swat him gently away. Respect the steamer, you remind him. It does more work than you do. He grins sheepishly, wiping sweat off his brow. You adjust the bamboo lids, carefully stacking them so the hottest basket stays at the bottom, the cooler ones on top. It's a delicate balance. Too much heat and the skins will tear. Too little and the fillings stay raw. Historians still argue whether bamboo steaming rose to its height during Han rule or later, but here, right now, you know it's worth in your bones. As you move to check the water level under the pot, your mind drifts to all the other things bamboo lends to your kitchen. Chopsticks, carrying poles, even the woven screens that keep flies away from your pickles. Bamboo is more than a plant. It is a quiet companion, reliable as a trusted friend. There's a fringe belief passed down among old cooks that a bamboo steamer will remember flavors from past banquets, lending each new dish a subtle blessing. Maybe nonsense, but you like to think every dumpling carries a bit of memory, handed down by the steaming baskets themselves. One apprentice tries to lift a steaming tray with bare hands, yelping in pain as the heat bites him. You roll your eyes, toss him a pair of cloth mitts, and remind him that a good chef respects fire as much as food. A small burn today is better than a giant blister tomorrow. A sudden breeze rustles the courtyard, swirling a few stray flower petals across the clay floor. You pause, watching them dance, and feel a quiet moment of peace, even with dumplings steaming, apprentices fussing, and the rain tapping its steady drum on the tiled roof. You place another basket on the steamer stack, adding dumplings filled with tofu and scallions. These will be lighter, a kind of apology for the richness of the pork and duck eggs. You believe every meal needs balance, and you teach the apprentices this again and again. A chef's task is not just to feed, but to comfort. One boy dares to ask if you ever get tired of dumplings. You laugh, shaking your head, telling him, that dumplings are never the same twice. They change with the season, with the mood of the cook, with the freshness of the onions, even with the weather. Dumplings are like poems, infinite. Beyond the courtyard wall, the river surges, swollen by the rain. You hear its low, hungry murmur, the same voice that has threatened Han villages for centuries. The dumplings, the bamboo steamers, the pickles. All of it is, in a way, a conversation with that river. If it rises, you feed its survivors. If it stays calm, you feed their celebrations. Either way, the kitchen must answer. You open one steamer to peek inside, seeing the dumplings bob. Slightly in the swirl of steam, plump and perfect, as if smiling back at you. In that moment, you feel as powerful as a general commanding an army, each dumpling a loyal soldier ready to do its duty. One of the apprentices, encouraged by your grin, starts humming a folk tune about lucky coins and dumplings, and soon the others pick up the melody. The song winds through the courtyard, mixing with the rhythm of raindrops and the soft hiss of boiling water, creating a lullaby that soothes your tired bones. You close the final bamboo lid, securing the tower, and step back with hands on your hips. Everything is in place. The pork dumplings, the tofu pockets, the simmering congee, the pickled radish. A kitchen prepared for anything, whether an emperor's inspector or a flood refugee. And in that tiny pocket of peace, between the roar of the river and the chatter of your apprentices, you remember what an old teacher once told you. A good kitchen is the heart of a community. You smile, watching the steam rise like a prayer to the ancestors, and let that thought settle you for the busy hours ahead. You barely have a chance to catch your breath before a loud rap echoes at the courtyard gate. One of the apprentices, eyes wide as duck eggs, runs to answer it, and you see a pair of palace stewards push their way inside with the smooth confidence of men who never have to carry their own baskets. Their pale robes drip with rain, and their faces wear the pinched, permanently dissatisfied look of those who live too close to power. You bow deeply, forcing a calm you only half feel. The taller steward steps forward, unrolling a scroll that rattles with importance. The Emperor's breakfast order, delivered with all the ceremony of a battle command. You resist the urge to laugh, bow again, and read the list. Dumplings stuffed with pork and duck egg yolk, congee enriched with mushrooms, and a side dish of pickled lotus root. Oh, and honey-candied hawthorn slices, a challenge since you have none on hand. The steward watches you like a hawk, waiting to see if you flinch. You nod instead, promising it will be done. After all, a Han Dynasty chef is nothing if not resourceful. Historians still argue whether imperial kitchens demanded impossible variety daily or if these lists were merely a test of a chef's pride. But you suspect the truth is somewhere in between. You call your apprentices together, voices overlapping in a flood of worry. Honey-candied hawthorn? One boy repeats it like a curse. You hush them with a glance, telling them to focus on what they know first. The dumplings will be perfect, the congee gentle, and the pickles bright. That will buy you a moment to figure out the candy. A quick rate of your storeroom yields a few half-dried hawthorn slices and a precious jar of honey meant for a festival. You weigh your choices, then sigh and pour the golden syrup over the tart slices, praying the Emperor will forgive the improvisation. While the honey soaks, you turn to the dumplings. You restack the steamer baskets, double-checking each seam. These have to be flawless. A torn dumpling served to a palace steward is worse than a missing head on the executioner's block. The apprentices feel your tension and fall silent, folding their dumplings with careful, almost reverent hands. You start the congee bubbling in the bronze pot, adding mushrooms from a clay jar you'd put aside just last week. Their earthy aroma blossoms in the hot rice, promising a smooth, savory balance for the rich dumplings. One apprentice sprinkles and chops spring onions, earning a nod from you. He's learning. Over the courtyard wall, you hear a faint shout about rising river. Water. A reminder, as always, that your battle is on two fronts. One against the emperor's appetite, and one against the flooding river that might wash away your entire kitchen. Fringe tale stirs in your mind as you stir the congee. One old cook claimed that if you whispered a prayer into the pot, it would calm the emperor's temper. Historians still argue if that was ritual or just desperate hope, but you lean close anyway, muttering a quiet wish for luck into the bubbling rice dot as the pickles are arranged on a polished tray. Their color bright against a lacquer dish, you catch sight of the honey hawthorn. It looks passable, its crimson glow softened by the syrup, but you pray the steward has a forgiving tongue today. You wipe your hands on a cloth, stand tall, and call to the palace men that the first dishes are ready. They step forward, examining each bowl and basket with a cold detachment that sends your heart tripping like a startled sparrow. They taste the dumplings. A long pause. Then a slow nod. They taste the congee. Another nod. Finally, the hawthorn. Slices. The taller steward chews with maddening slowness, then glances up and shrugs. You breathe again, a silent thanks to every kitchen god, every bronze pot, every stubborn bamboo steamer in the world. They roll up their scroll, satisfied, and disappear as quickly as they arrived, leaving the kitchen in a stunned hush. The apprentices break into cheers, practically dancing in their wooden sandals. You hush them again, though a grin steals across your own face. You set down your ladle, breathing deeply, letting the smell of ginger and sesame root you in the moment. You have survived another imperial demand. There will be more tomorrow. There are always more, but for today, you have outwitted both the palace and the river. You roll your shoulders, flexing fingers cramped from too many dumplings, and chuckle softly. Perhaps you think there is no greater joy than a kitchen that still stands, its hearth warm, its copper pots gleaming, even after the emperor himself has tasted what you have made. You watch the palace stewards vanish down the alleyway, their scroll tucked neatly under one arm, and feel your shoulders loosen just a bit. But no time to rest. Your own kitchen crew waits, mouths watering, stomachs growling after hours of labor. If there's one iron rule in a Han Dynasty kitchen, it's that the workers must eat. A hungry cook is a clumsy cook. You gather them around the stove, letting the steam curl past their tired faces. They look like soldiers returned from battle. Eyes wide, hair stuck to their foreheads, flour dust on their sleeves. You can't help but laugh softly. Waving them closer, they begin scooping congee into clay bowls, topping it with leftover mushrooms and a sprinkle of pickled radish. You point to the dumplings still steaming, giving them permission to help themselves. They cheer, grabbing chopsticks with all the grace of street cats pouncing on a fish head. One boy tries to snatch 3 dumplings at once, but you swat his wrist, reminding him to leave enough for everyone. The kitchen rings with laughter, the air bright with relief. Even emperors cannot eat every dumpling in the land. While they eat, you glance around, checking the hearth's embers, listening to the slow hiss of the bamboo steamers cooling down. The quiet feels like a blessing. The apprentices chatter about the palace inspector's face, how he looked ready to faint if he bit into a broken dumpling. You let them tell the story however they like. Every retelling makes them braver. One apprentice, cheeks full of dumpling, dares to ask if you ever dreamed of cooking somewhere else, maybe in a country far away on the Silk Road. You grin and tell him that a dumpling is the world in miniature, so you travel every day without leaving this courtyard. He looks puzzled, but you see the idea take root behind his eyes. Historians still argue whether Han cooks really saw their craft as a kind of storytelling or simply as survival. But to you, every bowl of rice, every bite of duck egg is a poem. In wheat and fire. As the last scraps of congee disappear, you refill the water in the bronze pot, readying it for a final rinse. One boy tries to duck out, thinking you'll excuse him from cleanup. You catch him by the sleeve, laughing, and set him to scrubbing the clay tiles. A fair price for 3 stolen dumplings. You think. A breeze drifts through the kitchen, carrying the smell of rain-soaked wood. It mixes with the steam and the tang of pickled radish, creating an aroma so familiar it almost feels like family. You pause to breathe it in, letting the calm sink all the way to your bones. Outside the courtyard, merchants are packing up their stalls. Oxen plod slowly down the lane, carts rattling over the muddy ruts. Someone sings a festival song in the distance, praising the rice harvest and the river's gentle mood this year. You know well that a gentle river is never guaranteed. Tomorrow it could rise up again and swallow the fields whole. But today, you have enough rice, enough duck eggs, enough laughter, enough skill. You check the bamboo baskets once more, wiping off droplets of condensation, patting them like old friends. These steamers have seen so many mornings, so many fires, so many failures turned into triumphs. They deserve a bit of gratitude, even if they're just woven sticks holding the world together. An apprentice brings you a cup of warm tea, slightly bitter from too many leaves, but still comforting. You sip, letting the warmth chase away the lingering chill in your hands. As the apprentices finish eating, you look them over, noting their exhaustion, their sticky sleeves, their sauce-smudged cheeks, and you remind them, gently, that in this kitchen, no one eats alone and no one cooks alone. They nod, serious for once, understanding what you mean. The kitchen is their home. The bronze pot is their anchor. The bamboo steamer is their memory. Together they make it work, even under the emperor's gaze. And as the lanterns sway in the breeze, you allow yourself a final joke. If you ever leave this kitchen, you tease them, the first thing you'll miss is the way I shout at you. They laugh, not disagreeing, and you join them, the sound mingling with the rain outside. For a moment, you feel light enough to float like a dumpling lifted by steam, and you think, yes, this is exactly where you are meant to be. You ease back against a bamboo stool, letting your spine stretch as the apprentices begin their cleanup routine. Pots clatter, wooden spoons scrape against clay bowls, water sloshes as they rinse away the traces of the day's feast. It's a chorus you've heard 1,000 times, a song of endings and beginnings. Your eyes drift to the leftover pork on the chopping board. Not enough for another round of dumplings, but too precious to waste. You scoop it into a clay pot with a splash of soy sauce, a dash of rice wine, and a handful of ginger. It will simmer slowly into a rich, comforting stew. Tomorrow's breakfast for a cook who rises earlier than any rooster. One apprentice eyes the pot, licking his lips hopefully. You wave him off. That's for morning, you explain. A chef plans ahead. Always. Historians still argue whether Han Dynasty kitchens strictly measured their leftovers or whether thrifty cooks simply learned by hard practice. Judging by how carefully you scrape every grain of rice off the bench, you know it's the second. From the courtyard, the river's steady murmur grows louder, a reminder that nature does not pause for your small victories. You stand, glance through the gate, and see the water flowing with a heavy, chocolate-brown swirl. Flood season never sleeps. There is a fringe belief, whispered among riverfront cooks, that if you toss a pinch of leftover dumpling filling into the river, it will spare your family for another year. You think of that, wondering whether superstition is sometimes just another way of feeling a little braver. You pinch off a crumb of pork and drop it through the bamboo fence, watching it vanish in the brown current. Maybe the river will remember your small offering. Maybe it won't. Either way, you feel a bit steadier. You turn back to find the apprentices bickering about the best way to dry bamboo steamers. One says in the sun, the other says over warm. Coals. You break in, settling the debate. Both, but never too quickly. Bamboo needs patience. They nod, absorbing yet another secret from the endless scroll of your lessons. One boy asks if you ever burned dumplings as an apprentice. You laugh, of course you did. You say, enough to fill a whole duck pond. But each mistake taught you something, and you promise him that someday he'll look back and be grateful for every charred corner. The lanterns swing gently overhead, sending shifting pools of yellow light across the courtyard tiles. You sip the last of your tea, now cool and faintly bitter, and think of the next day's plan. Fresh tofu, maybe a mushroom broth, or if you're lucky, a few river fish from the next market. One apprentice dares to ask what happens if the emperor changes his mind tomorrow and demands sweet buns instead of dumplings. You grin, tapping your bamboo spatula against your palm. Then we make sweet buns, you tell him, because a cook survives by adapting. Outside, the night air thickens, scented with rain and the faint aroma of mud. You pull your robe a bit tighter, letting its weight settle across your shoulders like a friend. Somewhere in the darkness, a frog croaks, echoing through the quiet. It feels like a benediction, a gentle punctuation mark on the long, demanding day. The apprentices finish scrubbing, stacking bowls and steaming baskets in neat rows like soldiers lined up for morning drill. You nod your approval, reminding them again that a clean kitchen is the first step to a peaceful mind. As they drift off to their sleeping mats. You pause by the hearth, placing a clay lid gently over the banked coals to keep them safe through the night. You murmur a quiet thank you to the fire, to the dumplings, to the river for letting you see another dawn. In that small moment, you feel the full weight of your craft. It is heavy, yes, but also beautiful. Because tomorrow, like today, you will rise before the roosters, gather your team, and begin again. And you wouldn't trade it for anything. You slip through the hush of the kitchen, the quiet thick as cooled congee, checking the corners one last time before you allow yourself to rest. The fire is banked, the knives cleaned and set edge up, the bamboo baskets stacked neatly by the door. There is a sense of deep calm in these small rituals, as though every pot and spoon exhales along with you. In the courtyard, a night breeze rattles the bamboo fence, carrying the scent of wet earth and the faint tang of vinegar. You pause to listen, letting the river's distant growl sink into your bones. It's a reminder. A cook in the Han Dynasty does not only fight fire and hunger, but also the whims of water and the moods of heaven. You move to the small table by the window, where a jar of leftover pickled lotus root sits, still bright despite the day's trials. You spear one piece, letting the vinegar and spice wake your tongue. Its crunch is a quiet triumph, proof that even the simplest work can hold back decay. An apprentice appears at your elbow, eyes drooping but determined. He asks, voice cracking, from sleepiness, how to know if the fire is truly out. You smile, showing him how to cup a palm near the hearthstones, feeling for hidden warmth, and how to sprinkle a pinch of water on the embers. If it hisses and steams, the fire is still alive. His eyes go wide, amazed at what seems like magic. Though you know it is only care passed through countless hands, historians still argue whether the Han chefs used written checklists or simply trained the next generation by watching and repeating. You suspect the second, because nothing teaches better than burned rice and scolded fingers. Beyond the courtyard wall, a festival drum begins to pound, far away but steady. You imagine a string of lanterns swinging above the riverbank, children racing through puddles, sweet buns sticking to their fingers, parents calling them back from danger. A fringe rumor surfaces in your mind that a cook who can hear the festival drums in their dreams will live a long, lucky life. Maybe foolish, maybe true. Either way, you choose to believe it tonight. You push the jar of lotus root toward the apprentice, telling him to eat one slice. "So you remember how to stay sharp," you joke. He grins, chewing the sour bite bravely, and scuttles off to his bedroll, mumbling a goodnight that barely clears the air. You take another look at the courtyard, half lit by the lantern swaying. From the gatepost, the night heavy with the promise of more rain. The river sleeps for now, but you know it never forgets. One day it will rise again, and your kitchen will have to rise with it as you roll your shoulders. A soft ache hums through your muscles, the day's work weighing on you like a cloak of honor. You accept it, the price of mastery. Each dumpling, each simmering pot, each grain of rice has carried its own lesson, stacked on top of years of small mistakes and hard-won victories. You pat the bamboo steamer towers once more, as though comforting a loyal friend. They are more than tools. They are witnesses to everything that happens between the first spark of dawn and the hush of dusk. You trust them like you trust your own hands. The festival drum grows quieter, swallowed by the dark. You lean against the window, letting the night air cool your face. Tomorrow will come with new demands, new scrolls, new surprises from the palace. Tomorrow the apprentices will ask new questions, the river will make new threats, and the dumplings will once again measure your worth. And that is as it should be, because in the heart of a Han Dynasty kitchen, peace is never perfect, but always possible. Folded carefully, steamed gently, shared generously. With a final glance across the courtyard, you slip away toward your own sleeping mat, the lanterns. Glow brushing across the bronze pot, catching it like a quiet star. You let yourself breathe out, trusting that the fire will sleep safely until the next sunrise. The first hints of dawn filter through the clay-tiled eaves, painting your kitchen in soft gray light. You sit up slowly on your thin mat, muscles protesting, but your mind already turning to the day's tasks. A Han Dynasty chef rises with the roosters, or before them, because breakfast does not wait. You slip outside to check the river first, bare feet touching damp courtyard tiles. The water still churns, but it hasn't climbed any higher overnight, a small mercy. You bow your head for a breath of thanks, then turn back to the kitchen, mind churning through ingredient lists like a counting frame. The apprentices are still, snoring in their corner, tangled in their straw mats like puppies, but you rouse them with a gentle clap. Groans and grumbles echo across the courtyard, but they rise, hungry, clumsy, hopeful. You tease them. No dumpling today until you sweep the floor. That wakes them faster than any rooster dot as they scatter to fetch brooms. You survey your precious stores. The pickles survive the night, safe in their jars. The rice bin is low, but enough for breakfast. The clay pot you filled with leftover. Pork still smells sweet, the meat tender from its overnight soak. You pour out a bit of the stew, spooning a piece of melting pork into a shallow bowl. A taste test, even before the apprentices can ask for a bite. The flavor is deep, humming with ginger and star anise, the kind of rich comfort that makes even the stormiest season seem smaller. Historians still argue whether Han Dynasty breakfasts were mostly savory or lean sweet. You know, both have their place, but on days like this, hearty and warm is the only choice. You call over an apprentice, showing him how to rinse rice for the morning congee, rubbing each grain between his palms until the water runs clear. Another boy fumbles with the stove, trying to coax flame from damp reeds. You step in, steady hands guiding him, reminding him a true cook never panics at a stubborn spark. One small moment of panic, though, a loud crash behind you. A basket of spring onions has tipped over, green stems scattering like startled fish. You resist the urge to scold, instead pointing to the fallen onions as an opportunity. Clean them, chop them, use them. Nothing wasted. The apprentices learn faster when they see how mistakes can feed the next meal. While the rice boils, you pull out a basket of duck eggs, checking each shell for cracks. One apprentice dares to ask if a cracked egg is still good. You answer with a wink. For scrambled eggs, maybe. But the emperor will never see a broken shell. A fringe belief passes through your mind. One you heard years ago, that if you whisper a wish while cracking the first duck egg of the morning, the river will stay calm. You murmur a quiet hope under your breath, tapping the shell gently, letting its golden yolk slip into the bowl as smooth as polished jade. The kitchen smells of wood smoke and simmering rice now, the best perfume in the world to you. You turn, seeing your team slowly finding their rhythm. One boy chopping ginger, another stirring congee, another sweeping flower petals blown in from the night storm. You let the moment settle over you, warm as the first rays of sunrise. You explain, for what feels like the 1,000th time, that cooking is more than slicing and stirring. It is patience, memory, attention. A story written with every meal. And as the congee begins to bubble, you lift the lid of the bronze pot, letting the fragrant steam brush your face. There is nothing quite like that breath of rice, water, and time mingled together, reminding you that no matter the river's threat or the emperor's whim, a cook's first duty is to nourish. In that moment, with dawn slipping through the bamboo fence, you feel almost invincible. The world may change, floodwaters may rise, the palace may send its impossible orders, but here, in this small kitchen, your hand still shapes something steady, something good. You breathe in, letting the rice's gentle sweetness calm you. And think, this is how you survive. One dumpling, one bowl of congee, one sunrise at a time. You stand for a moment in the center of the courtyard, the faint morning mist curling around your ankles like a house cat. The rice congee simmers away, sending soft white plumes skyward, while the duck eggs wait their turn beside the chopping. Bored. The apprentices, a little less clumsy than yesterday, move with steady focus. One carefully washes the duck eggs, holding each one to the light to check for hidden cracks, just as you showed him. Another is slicing scallions so fine you can mistake them for green threads. You allow yourself a nod of satisfaction. Perhaps they are learning after all. A breeze moves through, rattling the bamboo fence, bringing with it the faint cries of merchants setting up their stalls beyond the gate. Someone is already hawking fresh river carp, another calling about honeycomb cakes, the street slowly returning to its busy heartbeat. You return your attention to the congee, stirring gently with a bamboo spoon, watching the starches bloom until the rice becomes silky and thick. This is a dish that comforts even the harshest morning. A quiet promise that the world might be gentle, at least for a little while. Historians still argue whether the Han Dynasty congee was flavored as richly as later versions are left plain, but you believe even simple congee deserves care. Today, you drop in slices of ginger and a scattering of pickled radish, letting the flavors swirl and mellow together. An apprentice dares to ask why the pickled radish goes in last. You grin, explaining that if you add it too early, the brine makes the rice go sour, a lesson hard won by generations of cooks. He nods solemnly, storing the wisdom like a precious recipe scroll. A fringe rumor surfaces in your mind that a single perfect pot of congee could protect a family from floods for an entire season. Probably nonsense, but on mornings like this, you almost wish it were true. You leave the congee on a low flame and turn to the duck eggs. One after another, you tap them gently, revealing their bright orange yolks, rich and glossy. They promise nourishment strong enough to hold off hunger for a full day's work. You whip a few yolks with a sprinkle of salt, ready to steam them into a custard so silky it could rival a poem. The apprentices watch, fascinated by how you handle the eggs, as if they might break under a harsh glance. You tell them to treat every ingredient with respect, because it will repay you tenfold on the tongue. Beyond the courtyard, voices grow louder as the market wakes fully. A fishmonger's hammer rings against the scales of a carp, the thunk echoing off the walls. You pause to savor that chorus of daily life, harsh, honest, and reassuringly constant. The bronze pot begins to sing with a soft, metallic hiss, the water dancing under the congee. You smile, remembering how you once thought it was a ghost. The first time you heard it, only to learn it was the sound of heat and metal coming to an understanding. You slip the duck egg, custard, into a small bamboo steamer, placing it carefully on the top rack, where the gentler heat will coax it into the perfect, wobbly perfection. One apprentice tries to peek, lifting the lid, but you catch him mid-motion. Patience, you scold gently, is the first lesson of any cook. He blushes, hands behind his back, and you see how the rhythm of the kitchen is beginning to root itself in his bones as you move around. You brush your sleeve against a jar of lotus root pickles, their sweet sour perfume rising to meet you. They, too, will be part of today's breakfast. A final bright note to round out the congee and the custard. You catch a whiff of rain still clinging to the tiles overhead, the air thick with moisture. Even as the congee bubbles, you feel a hush inside you, a moment of peace, of gratitude, of readiness for whatever the day might throw at you. You steady your hands, watching the rice swirl like tiny fish in the pot, and remind yourself that, no matter the emperor's scrolls or the river's threats, you will feed this kitchen, and they will feed you in return. In this place, with bamboo steamers stacked like towers and the duck egg yolks gleaming, you hold a kind of magic, and you promise yourself you will guard it fiercely. The steam rises in graceful coils as you check the duck egg custard once more, its pale gold surface jiggling just right under the bamboo lid. You lift it with care, letting the fragrant heat escape into the cool morning air. Perfection. A custard. Soft enough to melt on the tongue, yet sturdy enough to carry the pride of your entire kitchen. One apprentice hovers, practically drooling. You hand him a tiny spoonful, letting him taste the warm, eggy silk. His eyes widen and you grin, telling him that someday, if he stays humble, he might make custard this good on his own. Beyond the courtyard, the sun is finally breaking through the low clouds, scattering light across puddles left by the nights. Rain. It strikes the bronze pot, making it glimmer as if woken from a dream. The congee inside gurgles steadily, its grain swollen and plump, carrying the warmth of the entire household. You call to the apprentices, asking for fresh herbs. They scramble to collect coriander, garlic chives, and a handful of spring onions, their green perfume as bright as a meadow after rain. You scatter them across the custard and congee alike, knowing the fragrance will lift sleepy minds awake. A fringe story pops into your mind. You once heard that a chef who shares the first spoonful of congee with his apprentices will never go hungry, no matter what disasters strike. Historians still argue whether that was truth or simple team building. But you decide to believe it today. So you gather them in a loose circle, each with their own clay bowl, and ladle out the congee. They bow, half ceremonial, half silly, and then dig in with all the enthusiasm of river fish chasing crumbs. The first spoonful is yours, but you let them finish the pot, their laughter brightening the courtyard more than any lantern ever could. Outside, a merchant calls about fresh millet cakes, another praises new batches of sugar-cured walnuts. The city is alive again, a vast feast you feel part of, even if you'll never taste every dish. You rinse the bamboo steamer, hands working by memory while your mind drifts to tomorrow's possibilities. Maybe lotus seed buns, maybe a salted duck egg congee, maybe even a fish broth if the river yields a fat enough carp. One apprentice asks, mouth still half full, why the emperor's food is always so complicated. You chuckle, explaining that power demands spectacle, but a real chef makes sure the simplest dishes are the best. The boy thinks about this, nodding as though you've handed him a secret map. Steam curls from the last batch of dumplings. The pork and duck egg yolk filling glistening like molten gold when you pinch one open. You break it in half, letting the apprentices taste, praising the fold that didn't leak. Small triumphs build great kitchens, you remind them, and beyond the lessons, you feel something steadier, a rhythm, a harmony, like the way river water fits around a stone. These young cooks may burn more dumplings, may drop more spoons, but they will carry on just as you did, just as your teacher did before you. Historians will argue, about the true legacy of the Han kitchen. They will trace spice roots, measure carbon from old clay pots, guess at your recipes. But they will never taste what you taste standing here. The laughter, the sweat, the hush after a successful dish, the pride of a good fold. One boy tries to slip away without helping clean, but you catch him laughing and set him scrubbing the clay floor. Another offers to polish the bronze pot, and you thank him, ruffling his hair. These small gestures, gentle, patient, every day, are how you build a kitchen strong enough to feed an empire. You place the duck egg custard on the tray, adding a twist of fresh coriander on top, and let yourself breathe in its rich perfume one more time. It is a humble dish, yet fit for a palace. That is your greatest skill, making the humble stand tall. You look around the courtyard, sunlight creeping over bamboo fences, steam softening every hard corner, and know in your bones that you are exactly where you belong. Here, with bronze pots and bamboo baskets, with 1,000 lessons still left to teach. You feel as strong as the river and as calm as the steam dot, and so the day begins once more. You stand with hands on hips, letting the sunlight warm your tired shoulders, and watch the apprentices bustle around. The last dumplings are stacked in bamboo baskets, the congee has been scraped from the pot, and the duck egg custard gleams like polished gold. It is a moment of quiet triumph, the kind that sneaks up on you in the middle of an ordinary morning. You take a rag and begin wiping down the broad chopping block, tracing the knife scars like lines of poetry. Each cut, each groove, a record of your own stubborn survival, one dumpling at a time. The apprentices join in, sweeping away stray scallion roots, rinsing their knives, putting clay bowls back on the high shelf. Someone hums a festival song, soft and low, and the others slowly pick it up. The rhythm blends with the hush of the river beyond the wall, weaving kitchen sounds with the river's murmur until it feels like the oldest lullaby in the world. You glance over to the bronze pot, still shining faintly from its last rinse, waiting patiently for its next command. You reach out, running your palm along its rim, thanking it for another day. There is a strange tenderness in that gesture, as if you and the pot have been through a battle together and won. One apprentice tugs at your sleeve, asking what you will cook tomorrow. You grin, listing off a fantasy of dishes: pork belly, braised in soy and cinnamon, rice cakes with sweet bean paste, dumplings folded into the shape of tiny fish. Their eyes go wide, amazed, hungry already for what's next. Historians still argue whether Han kitchens really had so much freedom to dream. But you know one truth: every chef, no matter how poor or powerful, dreams of the next dish. That dream is what keeps the embers alive. A fringe rumor echoes through your memory. An old cook once said that if you leave a single grain of rice in the pot, the ancestors might scold you in your dreams. You scrape every last grain free, smiling at the silly story, yet unwilling to tempt fate. Beyond the courtyard, the river shifts, catching a glint of sun, no longer angry but calm, for now. You let yourself believe your small crumb of pork offering worked its magic, or maybe it was just luck. Either way, you feel grateful. You call the apprentices together, gathering them around the hearth, and remind them gently that this is a house of food and a house of heart. They nod, a little solemn, and one dares to bow in thanks. You pat his shoulder, teasing him not to get sappy before the next round of dumplings burns. Lanterns still hang under the kitchen eaves, swaying as the morning breeze picks up. You watch them, thinking of how many mornings they have seen, how many emperors and floods and hungry bellies they have witnessed. The weight of history feels lighter when you carry it with laughter and garlic-scented hands. The apprentices begin to drift away to their chores, sweeping the alley, carrying compost. To the pig pen, scrubbing down the bamboo baskets. You stand alone for a moment, breathing in the lingering aroma of ginger, soy, and duck egg, letting it settle you like a calm sea. You promise yourself silently that tomorrow you will teach them one more fold, one more marinade, one more tiny. Lesson to guard against a world that is always ready to wash you away. And as you roll your sleeves down, gathering up the last bamboo lid, you look out across the quiet courtyard and feel a gentle, unwavering pride. If the river comes, you will meet it. If the emperor calls, you will answer. If a hungry child knocks, you will feed them. Because here, in your humble kitchen, with its bronze pot, bamboo baskets, and chorus of sleepy apprentices, you hold the power to calm storms. If only for a meal. And that is enough. Your hands grow. Still at last, resting on the smooth bamboo lid as the hush of morning deepens around you. The river has settled, the apprentices have vanished to their small corners to nap, and even the kitchen seems to exhale, releasing a final gentle sigh. You let your shoulders soften, rolling out the ache of long hours, breathing slowly as if the congee steam still filled your lungs. A drifting breeze rattles the clay roof tiles, whispering a calm lullaby across the courtyard. In this gentle hush, you remember every scent of the day: duck egg custard, sharp ginger, smoky pork, the green snap of spring onions. These flavors are woven into you now, part of the story you carry forward with each sunrise. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the ancestors, voices as soft as steam, reminding you that a cook's task is not only to feed the hungry, but to guard hope in the smallest of ways. You smile, letting that memory rock you like the river's gentle current. The lantern shifts slightly, creaking with the breeze, but do not fall. Steady, strong, unafraid. Like you. So, you allow the day's worries to melt, the heavy weights of the emperor's lists and the river's threats drifting away on a tide of warm, patient breath. Tomorrow there will be dumplings to fold, fires to stoke, children to scold, and stories to share. But tonight, you trust the quiet, trust the bamboo, trust yourself. Sleep comes gently, like steam wrapping around a perfect dumpling. You welcome it, eyes closing, heart calm.